Hello and welcome back to the Airshow Lounge podcast. In today's episode, we are going to sort of do a get to know each other episode with some of the hosts of the show. Not everyone is here, but we've got the same people from the last show. Any cool aviation stories we've got, favourite aircraft. It's just a nice lead up to Christmas sort of episode. My name is Dan, and joining me is
Jack,
Evan,
Pringle.
And yeah, so we're going to get straight into the episode today. Starting with Jack, as Jack has the coolest set of stories out of all of us because he's done a lot. So basically, starting off with you, Jack. What got you into aviation? What got you into aircraft and everything that you do today?
So I suppose for me, I come from a military background. So my stepdad was a Royal Marine and my dad was in the RAF, though that was very brief before he was medically discharged. So I've kind of, at home, I've always seen aeroplanes around the house and it's kind of sparked a interest. But I think the moment that I probably really got hooked was the 24th of September 2014, when I had a 4-ship of F-15s buzzing my hometown, which was really rare, basically on a training sortie before I think they went downrange somewhere.
And so that was sort of the moment that took you onto the path of, I am going down this aviation route. And I mean, I think that probably, it's a nice sort of start off because I think it leads into a lot of your stories that the same sort of aircraft from the same base have mean now so much in your life. I think that can get you started on a couple of stories you have, which I'm going to let you start off with.
Yeah, so ironically, just going back to that date, the only reason why I got to see those jets was I'd broken my leg playing football. So it was kind of they all say things happen for a reason. So that's my thing. But yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of cool stories. People might not think they're cool, but to me, they really are.
All of us here, they're definitely cool.
But I think I've got two that probably stand out the most. And the first one is the 493rds. So the 493rd Fighter Squadron, they're part of the 48th Fighter Wing at RAF Lakenheath. And in 2020, unfortunately, they had a mishap over the North Sea involving a pilot called Cage. Basically, I was an admin on a group, and a few of us decided to do an auction to raise some money for the Allen family, and we raised quite a nice amount of money. And then basically, I had a message from a friend of mine who originally he used to sell me patches. He was the snacko, and he said to me that he and the squadron would like to bring me on base as a token gesture to say thank you for obviously raising some money for the family. So on June 16th of 2021, I got up at 2:00 in the morning. I drove from Devon all the way up to RAF Lakenheath, and at 7:30, my mate messaged me, said he's going to come and get me, and yeah, I mean, what a day. So obviously went through the signing process to obviously get onto the base. And then he was like, we need to kind of be quick because the guys are about to step. And I wasn't too sure on what that meant, but he said, are you ready to see eagles? And I'm like, hell yeah, am I ready to see them? So got to the building. And I've literally walked in, my jaws hit the floor. I'm just kind of wow, this is unreal. And we got to the it's called the crypt, and I'm doing this in quotations, which is the bar. They're not allowed to call it a bar. and outside the crypt you had the top three. So that's where you get like your Met brief, and the pilots are assigned the airframe that they're going to fly on that day. And I had the base commander at the time. He was stood in front of me, and he was stepping for this flight. And he turned around to me, and he said really politely, he said, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" And I couldn't get anything out of my mouth. I was like stunned. And as he turned around, this really high-pitched hello came out of my voice, like out my mouth. And ironically, just going to fast forward here, a few months ago he messaged me and he said, "I remember you." And I was like, "Why do you remember me?" And he said, "Because you squeaked when you said hello."
It's that moment of the surreal moment, isn't it, when you've loved something so much and you get to the point where it's like, I'm now here. And
Exactly.
and like, I don't know, I guess it's anything with any sort of hobby or any sort of interest. It's the moment you get to that point where you can say, "Oh my god, I've watched this, or I've watched these people." It might even be sport, and you go, "These are the people, these are the jets, these are the aircraft that I've seen every time I've come down," and then I'm now seeing it happen from right next to everything and within the people and the group.
Exactly. And, like, I was just so overwhelmed and like with emotion, not in like a bad way, but like you're just trying to absorb and process everything that is going on. You've got, you know, some of the guys knew who I was, yet I didn't know them, and they were coming over to me and like shaking my hand and saying thank you. And I'm just there like, I've got a pilot who's just come over to me and like thanked me, and I'm like, it felt wrong because it should be me thanking them because the sacrifices they make. I know that some people do think that they go to these bases and they think, oh, it's like a free air show. It isn't. It it is very very real. Things can go wrong. But with the story, so my mate called Gotta, he said to me, "Get your camera. We're going out onto the flight line." I was like, "Okay, this is cool." So we walked. So it was me, Gotta, and Snoop, and we walked down to pass 44, which you can't actually see from the viewing area, but it's in that combi on the left hand side where the top aces are currently. And I was watching Jaeger strap in, and Gotta's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" And you just see Gotta get his like earplugs and just plop them in like really slowly, and I'm there as Jaeger pulls the JFS handle, and this thing is the ground shaking. It's ungodly what's going on in front of me. And then he was like, "Yeah, I better give you these earplugs." He gave me the earplugs, and I finally got them into my ears, and it was so unbelievable, like how professional it all was, like the whole outfit.
Well, I think everyone here has got to agree, and I don't know whether or not Evan and Pringle both agree, but the F-15 is the best sounding startup on any jet ever. Period.
I'm biased. The F-15 to me is the best thing ever. So I would totally agree with that.
I haven't heard many jets starting up, but from the few that I have, I'd say the 15 is definitely up there. In the top three.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the 15 start up a few times now, and I love it. And I think the only thing that comes close, but I haven't heard in person, is the F-22. Once the exhaust starts like howling, but the 15 still takes the win for it.
Yeah, the 22 is a pretty cool startup.
So we got to the point now. You're out on the flight line. You have just heard the JFS being pulled on one of the F-15s. What's happening now? Where'd you go next?
So I'm taking photos. Obviously, I'm trying to process everything, and like I'm told what I can't take photos of. Obviously, just so like no close-ups on the weapon systems.
Yeah.
And my mate said to me, "I was like, do you want to have a photo in front of the jet?" I was like, yeah, okay. So like I was having photos, everything. I basically felt like a VIP. And then yeah, so chocks went, and then the jets sort of taxied down towards EOR. So we were on 2-4 on that day, and the weather conditions were just absolutely perfect. So I thought kind of that was it. That was all I was going to see. And my mate again grabbed me by the shoulder and said, "Right, come on, we're going to follow them." So yeah, so I can't recall all the tales, but I can recall probably 6 out of the 10 that I saw. Anyway, so the jets were taxiing down, and I saw the King. And if no one knows what the King was, it was AT4-010, and it was in the Heritage scheme. And I got some photos of that. And the guy flying that aircraft that day, it was the first time that he flew the aircraft since his name been assigned onto the jet.
Right.
So I was really lucky. So I've got all these photos of the pilot doing like he's called Kong, so he was in the King, so I always call him King Kong for it. And he was doing like Kong, he was like beating his chest and everything. And he was being absolutely chill. And yeah, so I got photos of them on EOR. And ironically, this was actually an upgrade flight for Kong. He was doing his 4-ship. And yeah, they taxied out and they all took off. And they all took off. Then we had 2 strikes come down. And they then took off. And so, to those who don't know, the F-15Cs used 220 engines, whereas the Strike Eagle used 229s. And boy, could you feel the difference.
Well, I just want to take a step backwards. You talked about the King and the Heritage Scheme. What was the Heritage Scheme for? What did it look like? Because I know some people that may be new to spotting remember the sort of the Heritage Scheme maybe as the previous 494th one, which was used to celebrate like the US anniversary and then the Wings anniversary. So, talk us through the King, what it looked like and stuff.
So, in 2020? Yeah, 2020. No, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
2019 was D-Day 75. And part of it, each fighter squadron, painted a jet. So the 492nd, it had like Heritage D-Day stripes. So it had D-Day stripes on it, and the nose was like checkered. And then the rear stabilizers had different colours. So the 492nd were red, so they represented the Panthers. The 493rd had blue, which represented the bowlers, the 492nd. And the Panthers, which were the 494th, they had yellow, which is actually gold, who represented the 493rd, the Grim Reapers. And yeah, so the King was the 493rd one. So yeah, so yeah, it was so cool. It was really, really cool to see.
So you've got the 493rd story, but I know there's another story you've told me before we start recording that you wanted to talk about, which was with the 492, the 492nd, the bowlers.
Yeah, just to end that story with the 493rd really quickly. So we had 4 Hill F-35s come in while I was sat in an F-15C. So I'm looking out over my right shoulder, watching F-35s land while I'm sat in a cockpit, and I'm just, yeah, it was unreal. I have my photo taken and everything, and I've got some of the best stories and some of my, the really good friends that I've made from that day. And the story, in a way, they're friends. It's like I've said to Hannah Allen, they're friends that I wish I didn't have, but they're friends that I'm so glad I have.
Yeah.
So 492. So I don't know where to start with it. I mean, so I met a guy who was a pilot, and at RIAT in 2019. I suppose that's kind of where I get to know people.
Yeah.
Because airshows do bring the community together. Because if you don't want to be there, you don't go there, do you?
Oh yeah, no. If you don't want to go to like something like RIAT or something, you're not going to go. And it is just it's a sense of, you feel a sense of belonging in the sort of community.
Yeah, and so I was talking to a guy who was at the time he was an NFTCS, which is a no effing tactical call sign for the 492nd. And he had two Wizzos with them. And basically, I was talking to this guy, and this other the Wizzo came over. So Wizzo is the guy who sits in the back seat. To those who aren't too sure on a Strike Eagle, and he applied some of this guy's young lad's sun cream, and he came over to us, and me and this guy look at him, and we're just laughing. He's put so much sun cream on him, he looks like a ghost. Anyway, these guys, they then got, obviously, I think they all got their call signs when they went down range. But yeah, so back in April in 2022, yeah, so the day after the last Reapers left the UK, we went on base with the 492nd. So it was me and Matt Bonner and a guy called Ian Conway, and yeah, so Chip and Slap, they showed us around a Jet 91312. So I'd seen around an F-15C, and now I'd seen around an F-15E, and it was just unbelievable. Like the knowledge and the information that they kind of give to you, and like understanding is just, yes, it's unbelievable.
And these are, I mean, as we all know, these are only a handful of some of the stories that you have. I think when it comes to knowledgeability on the F-15, I think if anyone that I was ever going to go to, it's you, because you just seem to know everything. I mean, it's stupid the amount that you know, but you know, I think you have some cool stories, and I mean, thank you for sharing them now. And I think it's probably safe to say, which was going to be my next question, what is your favourite aircraft? I presume it's the F-15. I presume it's a Charlie as well.
So I get asked this question by my friends who've flown the F-15C and the F-15E, and I can't answer it because the F-15 as a whole, it's unbelievable. The platform that the aircraft is just, it's unreal. And through, I love the F-15C, the D and the E model. And I cannot pick one or the other.
I think we'll finish off your section. I'm going to drop you in it here, as I sort of did last episode. What's with the hate towards the F-35?
So I suppose one of the main reasons why I'm not a fan of it is because it's replaced the C model at Lakenheath. But also, like, I suppose in a way for me, like growing up, going to air shows and stuff like that, a fighter aircraft looks scary when you've got, wing tanks on it, you've got all your weapons showing, because that's what's going to hurt you. Whereas with the F-35, it's all internal, and I understand obviously stealth technology. Same with the F-22, and then you look at the Russians with the Su-57. Is it the Chinese with the J-20?
I think so, yeah.
Like, they are, I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint it, but I think a lot of it is they're now replacing what was one of my favourite aircraft with a battle penguin.
As you hear episodes go by, you'll get to know that Jack has a love-hate relationship with this aircraft. I think you like taking photos of it, but I think you prefer anything, if it was going to be like maybe a display in the future, you'd prefer it definitely to be an F-15 rather than the F-35.
Yeah, you've kind of hit the nail on the head with it. But as the where the world is, everything's moving on, and at the minute I'm kind of stuck in that, like, the transition phase.
Yeah, and I think that is a nice place to move on to one of our other hosts, which is Pringle, who, again, we heard on the last episode, the cast being the same. And we'll start off the same question with you, Pringle. Where did you get into aviation? How did you get into aviation? You know, was it a young age? Was your point where you went, oh my God, I can do this every day sort of point? Was it later in your life? You know, where did it start?
Well, my dad used to, back when I was younger, when I was like 2 or 3, he was trying to get his pilot's license, but he couldn't because his eye is all like messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And we live like an hour away from Duxford, so he'd take me to almost every Duxford Airshow, like all 4 throughout the year. And I hadn't been to a Duxford Airshow for like 7 years. And then earlier this year, I found my old Tornado flight stick.
Yep.
And it's just kind of re-sparked the interest, and it's now just kind of getting out of hand, the interest.
And
yeah.
You know, you've been to it's more recently, but do you have any sort of stories that you can talk about from maybe when you were younger? Anything that you can maybe remember? I know it's obviously looking backwards, but is there anything that you remember that was like, you know, a cool story to tell?
Not really, but I think I can remember. Well, there's some recently from like in Cobra Warrior in August. Probably the best ones I can remember in detail was when I went to Mildenhall to go see the Spang, and they had a pilot free day on the Friday where all of the pilots, including the spare jet, could do whatever they wanted really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 8 out of 12 of the F-16s did quick climbs right over us. Some of them skimming the fence, other ones just doing normal. But a cool story that I have, which isn't related to me particularly, me doing anything for it to happen, was my dad used to have a mate who worked on the Tornadoes up in Lossy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a coin flip to tell this story, and more I think about it, I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, he used to be a mechanic for the Tornadoes with 9 Squadron. And what he'd do sometimes was he'd get little, like, instruments which they're not going to use because they're, like, properly broken, and he'd kind of keep them. So over time, I had a flight stick, a pitot tube, and I think I had an altimeter. But the pitot tube and the altimeter are a loss, but I still got the flight stick, and it's got the kind of production serial numbers on it. So I don't think I can track it back to when or where it was made, but if it's possible, that would have been really cool.
I mean, it's a cool thing to have, you know, having memorabilia. I think a lot of us in here collect patches and stuff like that, so I think we understand the sort of the collection aspect of things. What is your favourite aircraft? Is it the Tornado, or are we going to go something more modern?
It's probably going to have to be the Vigan.
Okay, so we are sticking with sort of classic jets.
Just because the amount of effort that Saab put in to the Vigan, especially during like the time that it was during the Cold War and everyone was advancing jets, in my opinion, the Vigan was probably the most technologically advanced jet in Europe at the time, because they got help with America for the avionics, and then they got help with a bunch of random countries not random, but like a few countries in Europe. But it was mainly made by Sweden, and I think it was one of the first jets with reverse thrust, so it could taxi backwards.
Yeah. Just
on its own. And I don't know how it did that with that massive engine. But yeah, it's probably the highlight of Cold War jets for me.
I think, and I think hopefully with it still being part of the Swedish historical flight, hopefully you might maybe see it over in the UK this year, and hopefully for you, you are going to hopefully see it in the UK this year. And
I was thinking of taking a trip up to Sweden because their old display Vigan, the show must go on, the red one. It's just, I think it's the pilot who flew it. He just has it on his farm. He's just got a farm 40 minutes from Copenhagen. He's just got it in his garden.
I mean,
as well as a Draken. It's like, how are you allowed to do that?
I think any of us, if we had a big enough back garden, would definitely stick some form of aircraft in it.
Oh yeah.
So I think I can understand it. And
Yeah,
no, it's hopefully, I mean, for not just your sake, but everyone's sake in here, that we do get to see some of those historic jets.
pretty much
If
any
not
SAB
If not in
product.
the sky, if not in the sky, hopefully on the ground, like in 2022 at Riyadh.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that leads us on to our next person, being Evan. What got you into aviation? What was your path into becoming a plane nerd?
So, I think I was about 7 or 8, and my mum told me that we were going to Jamaica. We were going to go to Jamaica, and I'd been abroad before at this point, but beyond memory, where I can't remember anything about it. But for some reason, this day when she told me, I just broke down. I was petrified of getting on a plane and flying. So there wasn't really a way around it other than her telling me it'd be okay. But we never ended up going. But one day I was off school sick, and I was watching the TV, and there was a show on there called Air Crash Investigation. As the name gives away, it's all about air accidents, and then agencies like the NTSB sort of going through the wreckage and black boxes and trying to figure out, piece together why the aircraft went down or got damaged, etc. And I just remember binge watching it for, I mean, I think there's 20 odd seasons now, and I don't think there's an episode I've ever missed. And just watching how thorough they were with everything and how many fail-safes were in place, I was like, this isn't as dangerous as I think it is. There's nothing wrong with it. So it's sort of a weird segue into liking the idea of flying. It was watching them crash.
It's an interesting story. I think it's a weird one, but I guess it gave you that confidence to, sort of like aircraft. And then how, I know you've recently been a little bit more spotting wise. What got you into, spotting and going out to bases and stuff like that?
Yeah, so obviously that was civilian with some military crashes, but in terms of military aviation, it started. It's hard to pinpoint, really. It's not too long ago. I'd say at about the age of 16, so about 7 years ago, I was just out with some friends in some holidays, walking around. I could just hear this rumbling. I didn't know what it was, and I looked up, and there was a formation of red arrows above me. And I think, if I can remember right, there was 8 of them, sort of in like they were in a fingertip formation quite high up, but it was a clear day, and I could just see these red jets blasting over. Yeah. And I was like, oh, they never come around where I live. You don't get much military action. Well, I thought that was cool. So then I've gone home and I've had a ass around with my mum and just seen that at that time there was an air show on, and they were travelling down. They'd been at Valley and they were transiting across the country again, but they had just happened to come over. So then military aviation's been on the back of my mind since I've seen them. And then obviously I had FSX on a PC, bog standard PC. Couldn't run it very well. And then I started looking for military mods, and there was a military wings where they sort of simulate off of VATSIM.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that, and then really I never took any action into seeing military jets going to air shows or bases or whatever. And then when Flight Sim 2020 come out on the Xbox, I seen the TikTok for the wing for how I met you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Of an overhead brake, and I was like, that's pretty cool. I joined up, got on the Discord, did my check ride, which was cool in itself, just to simulate it. And then ever since that first day of my first flight was in the 35 on Flight Sim 2020, and then just since then it's skyrocketed. So I've gone to the Mac Loop 6 or 7 times. I've been to Lakenheath and Mildenhall twice now. I've been to RAF Valley, and then it's just the more you look into things and the more you see, the more I get pulled in to it all. There's just so much going on. It's so complicated, but from what we see from the jets, it's just all run perfectly smooth, and you wouldn't have any idea of, the training and the work that goes on behind it all. We just see the finished product until you do start getting on base days and whatnot, like Jack.
And obviously, being, this would be an interesting one to see where you go down with yours. What is your favourite aircraft? Is it civilian, or is it now something military?
Now it's military. It's the F-15E primarily. But civilian-wise, it was the 757. It was the Pencil.
Any reason on that?
It's just in the age of low-cost carriers, there's just 737s, A320s everywhere. And I got to go on a 757 once, and I just, just all sounded different.
Yeah.
It was just all sounded different. It just felt like there was more oomph behind it. And then after that flight landed, I did it back then. I still do it now. I'll ask to see the flight deck of every aircraft I can, and I just thought that one looks like it's like this is a flying machine. You got some digital gauges, but mostly analog in them. I mean, I think all the 757s are over 30 odd years old now, and they're just workhorses. You can just hear the difference when they're overhead and whatnot. But then, for now, choosing the F-15, since I've seen one of them come through the Mach loop and heard one start up, it's been love. I love them. So yeah, F-15 is the favourite.
So I think now's the point where I'm about to get grilled.
That is. So, everyone's heard our stories. Now, what is your story and what got you into aviation, Dan?
So my earliest memory of aviation comes from probably about 2005, maybe. An airshow that no longer takes place. Lowestoft Airshow. It was a seaside airshow, and I remember being taken there. I must have been probably 4 or 5 at the time. I wasn't too old, and that was the first time I ever experienced aircraft to a sense. I think I don't have any aviation stories, but I definitely have a funny story from it. I was the sort of kid when you're younger that used to dig holes on the beach. It just happened to be that I just finished digging this hole, and I moved probably a couple of meters away from my parents. And at the time, the Jaguar just was running in for its display. And this was the first time I'd ever heard an afterburning aircraft. And safe to say, I could not sprint quicker back to my parents, except I forgot there was a hole in the sand, and I went face first into this hole in the sand, being my first ever memory, really, of aviation.
So, do you have any prior background to that? Is there a reason why your parents took you to it? Did they have did they show an interest in military aviation or aviation in general?
It must have probably been just a way to get me out of the house, I guess. Because my mum's never really been into aviation. My dad, he enjoys it, but has never been an enthusiast in a sense. I mean, it was the only reason he went to air shows was for me and my brother, who were both young, to get us out doing something, get us interested in something. And I think he's been to air shows with me, ever since and stuff. It's always me, me nagging him. Do you want to come to this one? Do you want to come to that one? And now now that I'm able to go to ones by myself, I think he's now taking the back seat. But I think most of it's come from myself and just becoming fixated on the idea that there's aircraft out there that are just so cool. Yeah.
So obviously you just mentioned that you don't really feel like you've got many cool aviation stories to tell, but have you got anything that like stands out? Making friends. Have you made friends or anything like that through aviation?
I think we've all made friends for aviation. I think we all came to know each other through aviation, as Evan was saying earlier. We all came to know each other through Microsoft Flight Simulator, whether or not it was through the wing that we were a part of, or whether or not it was previous to that. I mean, me and you, Jack, we met through Flight Sim. We started a mini flight wing thing on Facebook Messenger, and then we transitioned over to what was our previous virtual 48th Fighter Wing, where we met Evan and Pringle and all the other people that you will eventually meet on the podcast. We all met through this one love for aviation and through mainly Microsoft Flight Simulator. And these are the friends now that we've had for a couple of years now, but I think probably are some of our closest friends now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think if you don't mind me saying as well, we as a whole organise trips to make sure that we try and see people when we go to bases.
Yeah. I think it was only in October this year that we had our last sort of one for this year where we all met up. Some of us lucky to live close. For me, I'm driving 2.5 hours down. I think, some of the people are driving even further than that, and we all made efforts to try and get there at the same time for at least a couple of days period where we can sort of see each other. And I think it's nice to be sort of part of a community now that we think, and I think we have always had these chats, and this is how we made the podcast. We always had these chats about air shows and stuff, and what's going here, and that's a really cool cache, or and I think that's why we just want to share that love that we've gathered over time and creating this little community of people that just love aviation and love air shows and everything to do with it, and that is what nicely, obviously, this podcast is meant to be in the future.
Totally agree with you. So, hard question. What is your favourite aircraft and why?
If you asked me 2015 or prior, I would have said the Vulcan, because that aircraft is just a magnificent aircraft. I think, when you've got a bomber that's got an actual flight stick rather than a yoke, I think it says everything about it. But if we're going now's a hard one. Now's a hard one, because I could conform and I could say the F-15 and go with everyone else. But I don't know whether or not to go with something different. Because I'll be honest, the Gripen has always had a really special place in my heart. I don't know why. Every time I see one get announced at like RIAT or an air show or something, like when it must have been in Cosford in 2019, or it might have been a bit earlier than that. But it would have been 2022, and there was a Gripen announced for it. I was like, oh, that's great. So I think I'm gonna go away from the conformity, and I'm gonna go Gripen.
Nice. I've actually just thought of a question for everyone. I hope you don't mind me asking this. I'll give you all sort of 30 seconds each, and I'm going to come to Evan first. What is one aircraft from the past that you would love to have seen?
Ooh.
From the past.
I've got mine. If you want me to go, I can go.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
It's got to be the English Electric Lightning for me. It's got to be.
That's a very good shout.
It's 2 rocket engines strapped with a bit of wings, and you put a person on top of it, and that's a plane. I think that'd be so cool to see. And it's a shame that we don't have something similar to the Swedish historical flight that could fly that sort of aircraft in the UK. But definitely, I've got to go back and see back a Lightning.
Yeah. So, previous aircraft I'm gonna have to go with, and I know it's not too long ago, but I missed it from the time I got into military aviation, is the a Tornado. I know there's still a couple out there, but I never got to see one. I think the RAF retired them in 2019, and I started hitting up the Mac loop in 2020, late 2020 or early 2021, so I missed that.
Damn, you missed out on a very, very good
Yeah.
aircraft.
Yeah.
Pringle, how about yourself?
I mean, there's so many to choose from, and this is going to be one of those things where I say an answer now, and I'm going to think of a way better one later. But I'm going to have to say the Hawker Hunter, probably.
Ooh.
Preferably the Swiss one, because some of the liveries that the Swiss put on their Hawker Hunter was absolutely amazing. They're restoring one now, which hopefully in a couple years we'll be back flying and doing displays. But yeah, I've only seen that thing fly once, and that was at Duxford at an air show. Because what I did recently was I went back to all the years I went to Duxford and I tried to find what aircraft I've seen, but I might not remember. And the Hawker Hunter was one of them in a special kind of sunset livery.
I think that takes me back to talk about Hawker Hunters. It must I don't know what year, it'd been one of the Waddington air shows. And they had like 6, 7 or 8 Hawker Hunters all doing sort of formation passes and takes you back to some of the air shows and what we used to have. And I think, well, hopefully maybe in the future, even if it's just one or two, displays in the future of a Hawker Hunter or something like that, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely. I'd totally agree.
But
I think there is so many to choose from of previous aircraft. Like, it's local to Jack now at Mildenhall, but obviously we're a few decades out where they used to house the SR-71 at Mildenhall, I think.
Yeah, so I kind of have 4,
oh, here we go.
but so one of them was SR-71. The other one is an F-14.
Oh, shout.
Then I know they're still flying, but an F-117 would have been awesome.
Yeah.
And then, do you know what? I only saw it once, and I wish I'd kind of been born a few years earlier. But Concorde.
Yes.
Yeah. I think now that you start listening through things, it's like now you start changing your opinion. I think there's so many things that I'd love to go back and see, but I think that's now what makes me appreciate what I'm seeing now, and what in the future when the F-16's gone or becomes a rarity. We're seeing so many F-16 displays now. Just cherish what we've got now because we can see them now, and it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of what we see now are the F-15 is the airframes. Is it 51, 52 years old? F-16, the same. Yeah, they're all old. They're all getting there. It'll be to the point where people wish they could have seen what we see.
Yeah, definitely. I think that reminiscing sort of back is a nice way to end the second episode of the Airshow Lounge podcast. Saying it wrong already. The look forward sort of to the new year. I think this is going to be a massive year for us. And I think I will put a little bit of a teaser. The first episode, hopefully, that we publish in the new year, is going to be one hell of an episode. And I'm going to leave that there and let you all ponder on what that might be. And to that, I hope whoever's listened to this, if it's before Christmas, have a really good Christmas. If it's after Christmas, I hope you had a really good Christmas and a festive period. I hope that we get to see some of you in air shows all around the UK, and even if some of us go abroad next year. So yeah, have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.